Okay, we have some time for Q&A with this panel on building lifelong seafood consumers. And I know we have mics coming around, so if anyone has any questions for Julia, Andrea, or Stefanie. I think we went over here with Catherine.
I loved your presentation. Thank you very much. You mentioned that the average school program has $1.35 to have a meal with all of the requirements. What is it in Loudoun County? I'm just wondering, it seems like yours is a fairly wealthy district, but maybe not.
So the misconception about school nutrition programs is that the money allocated towards school nutrition programs and the funding in the budget is directly related to the economics, and it's actually kind of the reverse. So typically your more affluent districts have a smaller budget because they're getting less reimbursement from the federal government for their programs. And so that is also why most school nutrition programs are self-op as well. So if you look at that, they have to pay their way within a school district. So a lot of programs are not getting money from their school boards. So the taxpayer dollars aren't paying for the school nutrition program. That's why they offer things like the a la carte snacks and the beverages at a lot of the school districts across the country, because that helps offset some of those costs and brings in extra revenue.
Great, thank you. And I had a question. What are B corporations?
So B Corporation, that's a process that any organization, I think, is sort of open to anyone for certification, but it's a pretty rigorous process that companies go through to certify. So it's basically that sort of triple bottom line view of, profits, people, planet, and not just profit. So recognizing that you have other stakeholders in the game and not just your shareholders, like if you're a public company. So a lot of different things go into it. I'd encourage you to look into it. But I think in terms of companies that are currently, some of the newer ones that are currently B Corp, I think Athleta just signed on recently. I think companies like Patagonia are. So it's a high hurdle to meet, but it's really a great signal to consumers that this company stands for a lot.
I had a question for Julia. In your first slide, you had a report on the growth of sustainable seafood. I didn't quite get if that was by dollar sales or sentiments, the different growth of this on that slide.
Yeah.
What was that reporting on?
Yep. So that measures dollar growth in sales. And so Nielsen, we've got sort of survey data from consumers, and similar to what Andrea shared, and that's a global view in terms of what we do from a survey perspective. We also have global purchase data. So the slide you're talking about is sales growth, and Nielsen Product Insider, we've got these different categories. A lot goes into each individual category. So like sustainable fishing, dolphin friendly, all kinds of different things in the sustainable seafood category. But that's dollar growth.
So when it says sustainable seafood, the package that they purchased had some indication it was certified or sustainable in some manner?
It could be that, but we are careful to go beyond the marketing claim. So we're looking at what's in the ingredients, what's truly in that product, to make sure that we're not getting products that are greenwashed or companies that are claiming things that are not actually true. So it could be a claim or certification, but also could be an ingredient or other attribute that puts it in that category.
Great. Thank you. Oh, right here.
Hi, Jackie Marks with the Marine Stewardship Council. First, a question for Julia. Is the data that you presented today available online or somewhere we can find it?
Yep. So if you go to Nielsen Insights, you can find, we've got tons of different studies and things. Some of it, highlighting the data that I shared today. But yeah, Nielsen Insights, we publish things on a continual, ongoing basis.
Great, thank you. Yeah. And then the second question for Julia and Andrea. Actually, I think 4 of the presentations today talked about trust when it comes to seafood. So do you have a definition for that, either from a Nielsen perspective or from Seafood Nutrition Partnership? What does it mean for consumers to trust seafood?
I can give a quick one, and you maybe more on seafood. But for us, we think about trust and loyalty kind of going together. So our most recent data, we're finding that 92% of global consumers are disloyal to the brands that they support. So no longer are we living in a world where my mom or my dad or I always buy X product or X type of toothpaste or what have you. So we're living in a world where consumers are more disloyal than ever, which means that there's a huge opportunity to be telling a story that's engaging and authentic and meeting them where they want to be. So I think that disloyalty maybe is a scary thing for brands, but also it's, I think, an opportunity to, snag new consumers, to show consumers a better option and a better pathway. So, it's that disloyalty or loyalty, the way that we think about it.
So I was actually thinking about it not from a seafood perspective, but people don't want to be marketed to as much. They don't trust messages coming at them as much, or at least are constantly questioning the source of it. And so we really wanted to be authentic in it coming as much as possible mom to mom. And I think that's where we were trying to build that trust with real stories and real people. To address the seafood piece, I think it's a hard battle because there's what makes the media headlines is such a small fragment of what's happening in the industry, where you have mislabeling either at retail or at food service on menus. And that's not really super prevalent, but it's happening. And so that's the story, and people don't know where to go. We've found the answer to that in a lot of cases is it's 4-step, and you actually helped develop it. So I think you know a lot of the answer. But we worked with a lot of the NGOs, the certifiers, with NOAA to really understand what are like really simple things that we can communicate to the consumer. And so we came up with 4 things, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. It's if you want to buy sustainable seafood, quality seafood, look for a label, look for a logo, a certifier, and look into that certifier a little bit to understand what it means. And we showed we have a little resource on it that's on our website, and we showed a bunch of different little logos as to what that could look like. Second, go to a trusted retailer. Know who your retailers are. Look into what their sourcing policies are. Almost every retailer has a sourcing policy on their website. Ask questions. Talk to the seafood category, the seafood guy behind the counter. Some of them know what they're talking about. Some don't. If they don't, and you don't trust it, don't trust it. That's fine. But ask the questions. Go online. NOAA has a great resource. Fish Choice.
Fish Watch.
Fish Watch, sorry. There are so many. There's Fish Choice. They work with retailers and do a really good job. But sorry. And then
Buy US.
And Buy US is the 4th thing. Oh, sorry. Sorry. It's like, Buy US is the 4th thing on there. So if all the other things fail and you really aren't sure, we know that U.S. fisheries are the best managed fisheries in the world, and so we can trust the seafood coming out of it. And so we're trying to market those messages out. Those guides are actually in the hands of several retailers and dietitians at retail that we work with, so that they can use them when they're talking to consumers and have questions also.
I have a question for Stefanie. I know I have a mic here, so I can hog up the questions. Stefanie, how often do you serve seafood in your schools, and how do you make that budget work for seafood?
So we actively work to serve seafood on the menu at least once a week, but then we also have meal vending machines, which is a reimbursable meal that is chilled. And one of the #1 requests from our high schools in which we have those machines was tuna. So we have tuna every day in the meal vending machines at our high schools that have those, and we're always looking. Really, the one thing is there aren't a lot of K-12 products that are seafood related on the market. And so that is a challenge because our kids want it, but there's only so many products that we can get, and they really want more than the fish nugget. And so a lot of times, like, there are 10 different fish nuggets, but the kids want something else. And so that is always our challenge and our hurdle. So it's not necessarily that programs don't want to add seafood on the menu. It's just that they don't know how, but then also being mindful of the pricing parameters that are attached with the seafood. But that's really where having those conversations with operators to really find out because we don't just look at price, we also look at perceived value. So that's why when we bring in local proteins onto our menu, we're paying a little bit more for that tray for that day because we see the value in that. And you can balance your menu out for the rest of the week to balance it out. And so that's where you get creative, and that's where a lot of operators are now in school nutrition, is doing that balance. But until we have those products that we know will hold up well on the serving line without drying out, that is always the challenge. And so that also goes back to the education piece that we talked about taking frozen seafood and really educating the operators on how to prepare it, because a lot of school nutrition employees may have no culinary experience, and their position in school nutrition could be their first position in food service. And so keeping that in mind, that not every district has a chef on staff to be able to fully train and execute the products in the way in which the industry is envisioning.
Is there a question?
Hi, I think this is for Stefanie. And we can talk about it offline because I suspect it'll be a conversation. But I was really interested in the remark you gave where you were really referencing kind of the synergy that here you've got a particular food that you have prepared and then educational aspects to it and the alignment of that. And working at a science-based agency at NOAA, whether you're talking about sustainability and science-based management or advanced technologies in farming and all of the stewardship messages that go with that, do you think the schools are more and more open to trying to find some synergies in their curriculum and how it ties with the food and where it comes from and what our impact on planet, et cetera, is? Again, probably a longer conversation, but I think it's a really interesting notion.
Absolutely, because it all connects into farm to school. And that is a major initiative just in Loudoun County. Out of the 92 sites, we have 52 sites with active school gardens. We have sites exploring aquaponics. We have greenhouses, because teachers understand the why. And they understand that their kids want to learn where their food's coming from. They don't understand the how. So when you help teachers bridge the gaps, knowing that they're ultimately the content experts of, soil health or whatever, but as partners, if you can help reinforce those standards through educational lessons, trainings, guides, handouts, worksheets. We also, virtual farm field trips are very popular because with budget cuts on the education side, a lot of times they can't get out to the field trip and go out to the farm. So we have classes Skyping with a farmer. And the farmer is taking them on a tour of the farm, and we archive those field trips on our website so that teachers can access them and the kids can still ask questions, and they Skype with them. We do Facebook Lives where they can ask the questions and get the answers from the true expert, and it makes that experience far more personalized than just having a teacher or even us as a school nutrition operator in the classroom, because they're like, well, you don't really work with Alaskan fish. And I'm like, well, you're absolutely right. I eat it, but that's it. But when you connect the teachers with those, and so school nutrition programs are truthfully acting as that intermediary between helping get information and those connections between the classroom and the industry together and bridging that gap.
I think we had a question over here with Stephen.
Yeah. Question for Julia. Stephen Severino with Verimaris. You had some impressive growth on salmon, and it was great to see the penetration growth in the Indianapolis market. Have you looked at the market basket growth potentially in that market, either on like salmon or certain species, or in Indianapolis specifically? Because that market basket could be a great way to compare against other categories. If we're going to compare against chicken, we could say the market basket of salmon buyers could be potentially 10 times higher than someone who's buying chicken or meat, and it could put us all in a really strong position when we're talking with retailers.
Yeah, that's a question we get asked a lot, just in terms of what that basket looks like. I would say I don't know off the top of my head. I know in our Nielsen Total Food View it might be online, or parts of it might be online. You might be able to find that, but I know that value-added seafood options are just generally up across the board. So I think looking for innovation there in terms of consumers looking for maybe more ready-made or more sort of ready-to-go kind of options, those seem to be up. I don't know in terms of the Indianapolis piece.
Well, I was actually going to respond kind of on behalf of Nielsen. Nielsen also worked. Nielsen also worked with the Food Marketing Institute, and I know you sit on that council as well, and did the Power of Seafood report, which is a really fantastic report that I agree everyone should read. And they did survey. They took Nielsen data, but they also did a massive survey across the country and looked at the people who buy seafood and then their total basket versus not. And the people who buy seafood, I think, and I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was almost 3 times the amount of basket size. Yeah, 3 times higher. The total basket size, what they're spending at grocery store, is 3 times higher. And so for retailers to get those people to eat more seafood means they're likely going to spend more money overall.
Well, definitely looked at the
Yeah.
penetration, which is panel penetration in Annapolis. So I mean, if you had the market basket, then that amplifies your results in Indianapolis. Because
I can share some more information with you about Indianapolis.
Because then you could say you don't not only did this, but it would be in the scheme of the entire store. It would be really powerful.
Thank you. And then David has a question.
This is just a follow-up on the Nielsen question, and this is kind of in the weeds, but I've heard that the Nielsen retail data doesn't capture a very good job of random weight items like fresh seafood, and the home panel scanner data only a subset, and it's not very well the random weight fresh fish is very hard to get out of the Nielsen data. Is that true, and does that color some of your interpretations of the data if you're talking about seafood but only specifically about frozen?
So, I mean, Nielsen's perfect and it's the best in every absolute way. I honestly don't know that is a little bit in the weeds for me, but I'm happy to I'll get your card and I can connect you to somebody who's a retail measurement expert and could answer that question. I would say what I do know about our panels is we map to the census and like all of the different demographic, kind of our data scientists working behind the scenes. So we've got a very representative panel and a very representative, retail base, but I don't know about that weight question, but I'm happy to connect you to somebody who does.
I've been emailing some with Kilt's Marketing, which is the service that sells the Nielsen data. I've heard that the fresh seafood data isn't really available.
So I think you're talking about something that we make available to academic researchers maybe through Kilt's, but which is a separate service than what we've got from a commercial client perspective. But I'm happy to talk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists and speakers today.